Now it feels like we can begin, and we'll just start off with the first questions that have been sent to us, but again, please do send your questions to Katyayani so that she can pass them along to us. And forgive us if we glance at the phone every now and then because of the different technical difficulties. We want to make sure that we're not suddenly cut off from you. So the first question for this evening: as we move ahead on the spiritual path, is it okay to like some friends more and some less? Is there a way to balance this disparity? How do we particularly deal with old friends who are more inclined towards worldliness? It's a very good question, and I will leave it to you? No? Okay, I will leave it to me. It's a very good question, and it's one that the devotee often faces, that after getting on the spiritual path and having so much enthusiasm for it, and also feeling like it's the best thing that we've ever found, and we, so much more of who we are and what we want, it starts to come into our consciousness, that then we find that not everybody wants to come with us. And it can be a little bit difficult at first, because suddenly, if you recommend a good restaurant, everybody's interested. But if you recommend a spiritual book, a spiritual path, suddenly, at least this was my experience, that suddenly my friends were saying, no thank you. You keep that to yourself, thanks very much. And at the same time as they were not having interest in my new deep interest, they were not sharing that I was not really sharing the same interests that really we used to have in common. So if they said, let's go and have this long party, or let's go on this 7-movie marathon, I just didn't find it as compelling. And in fact, I found myself a little more drained by it, whereas in the past, of course, it was just fine. And so this is natural, or at least I should say it's common. And so, first of all, don't feel too badly about it. And it doesn't mean that we have to make big decisions and cut everybody off or anything like that. At the same time, we may find that as our tastes change, that we end up drifting may not be the right word, we end up gravitating, moving, being drawn towards a different circle of friends. This is actually true whether or not we're on the spiritual path. For example, if we get really interested in, raw foods or some kind of fun thing, we tend to make new friends who are interested in that same thing, people who we meet and so on. And so it happens, and in terms of balancing the disparity, I don't really know. I would say when you're with your old friends, those who are sincere, where there's good love there, where there's closeness, where there's, if not interest, at least understanding and acceptance of what you yourself are doing, then why not? It can be a good practice to stay in touch with them, listen to their sharings, try to share what you can of your own experience, and just try to find new areas of commonality. On the other hand, if you're moving away, sometimes you just have to let them go. And it sometimes happens that relationships end, not in anger or in big separation, but just because the karmic connection that was between you has been fulfilled. And the relationship is no longer serving the same purpose that it was before. So, in these ways, the only other thing I would add to keep in mind is that if you find the friendships are really pulling you down, or if you have friends who are actively criticizing or ridiculing what you're doing, then that's something to take seriously. Because, in all honesty, they're not really true friends if they're treating something that you find so important lightly or even disparagingly. So sometimes we do have to take action, you could say, or become more distant. But hopefully that's not the case. But it is something to seriously keep in mind.
The other thing that's important is to listen to your heart and to make sure that, there's a fine line between judgment and discernment. And it's perfectly fine to discern that someone is not sharing similar values anymore or similar likes and dislikes anymore. But we want to make sure, especially when we're new on the path and these friendships go, that it's not due to our own spiritual pride. Sometimes it's easy to think, well, now I'm on the Kriya Yoga path and, I've got the airplane route to God, and poor soul, you're not part of what I'm doing, and you don't want to listen to what I have to say, and so therefore I'm not going to be in touch with you. So just remember that it's best to listen to your heart and meditate on it. If environment is stronger than willpower, and so that if you find yourself in a group of friends that really have habits that really go against what you're able to do now on the spiritual path, whatever their behavior is, and it's very difficult to hang out with those types and maintain your spiritual peace, maintain feeling uplifted. And you'll notice a big difference perhaps when you're around your Sangha friends versus your other friends. But again, listen to the heart. That's the most important thing. You don't want to close your heart. You don't want to be in judgment. So that's something to meditate on. And it can hurt the heart to drop a friendship. It can hurt the heart to just cut someone off. So listen to that. Listen to not cutting people off, but maybe a discussion can be had, just like, what, I just don't feel like watching zombie movies anymore, or whatever it is. And I wouldn't mind going to see other movies. Oh, you don't like that? Well, then let's go walk in the woods, or let's go walk on the beach together and catch up, or whatever it is. See if they're willing to change the behavior. And if they're not, then that's more to meditate on. But really, take it into your meditation and listen to your heart. Relationships with people, friendships. We get very few true friends in a life, and it's important to value that and take it seriously in that way.
The only other thought I would add is to take it slow. Often these things work themselves out without us having to take any drastic or direct action. And we may feel or think we feel the trend of what's going to happen, but give it time to play out. Give the person time to adjust. You never know. And better to move slowly, especially if it's a long-standing friendship.
And sometimes friends leave us. Sometimes they hear what you're doing. They've been atheistic or something in their life, and they just don't feel drawn at all, and in fact feel the opposite of drawn. and then suddenly they're not calling you. And so in that case also it's good to meditate and say, Master, is this something I need to listen to? Is it okay to just let it go for now? And then sometimes friendships circle back. So maybe you're out of touch for a while, especially if it's a college friend or something like that. And then they grow up a little bit more, and they get more mature and maybe a little interested in something. Remembering, oh yeah, back then I remember he was involved in that thing. I think I'll call him. But just keep the door open if it's something like that. And if someone just doesn't want to be around you because they don't like what you're doing, kind of, there's a loss there, so it might be sad, but also sometimes it's best to just kind of let that be nature taking its course in the way that is wanted. And again, you take that into your meditation and see how that feels.
Our next question for this evening: how can we deepen our love for God?
One way to deepen our love for God is to not think of him as far away from us. Not think of him as outside ourselves and up there and far away. And Yoganandaji talked about thinking of God as the Father, as the Mother, and as the friend. And even in our Ananda prayer, when we say Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, then we say Friend, Beloved, God. And we're not saying Friend, Beloved, God. We're saying Friend and Beloved, God. And so we're talking about God as the Beloved. We're talking about Him as the Friend. And when we learn to practice the presence of God in our lives, which is, we did a class a while back on that, and it's often talked about at Ananda, in terms of bring God into every aspect of your life as best as you can. We were talking the other day to a group about something similar, which is, very often when we meditate, we've taken the meditation classes, we want to work towards Kriya, we want to up our meditation time, and we think of it as a discipline. Oh, I've got to, really kind of try as hard as I can to get my meditation up. And forget that the whole purpose of all of this is to draw closer to God. So when we have to meditate, say you're meditating a half hour in the morning or a half hour in the evening, rather than think of that as this is something I have to do in order to get Kriya, think of it instead of as this is the time I'm going to spend with you, God. This is paying attention to God. And when we pay attention to God, He pays attention back. So it's think of it in terms of spending time with God. And when we show our interest and put our energy in that direction, He will meet us more than halfway. And when we put positive energy out, God reaches and pulls us up even more. It's part of natural law of things. And we think we have to do all this effort in order to reach God. But when we put the effort and the intention out, I want to love you more, God. I want to get to know you more, God. And we bring that into our meditations, that devotional aspect, then you will very quickly find God giving back that love, God giving back that interest and attention and upliftment. And anytime we feel an upliftment or grace in our lives, it's God's grace, it's God's upliftment, and He's answering our prayers by doing this. And that means He's nearby. He's affecting our everyday way of being. He's not just granting us our wish periodically like a genie in the sky. I have a wish today. Today I really want to find a good parking lot, or I really want to get that job promotion. Okay, God, I'm praying for that now. No. Don't do that. Instead, we say, God, guide me. I'm interested in this job promotion. Should I go for it? What do you think? And okay, then what do you think I should do in order to go for it? And okay, I'm in a real big hurry, and if I don't find that parking place, then I'm going to have to be late for a very important thing. Maybe you can help me. But those kind of magical experiences are not what we're going for. We're going for everyday grace, every day, every moment connection. Not a magical thing. God granted me my wish. Guru granted me my wish. I must be special because Guru granted me my wish. We're all special, every moment. And you have to think of yourself that way. And God loves you as His child. And so think of how a child responds to his mother and father. Does he say, I hope they feed me today. I hope I get clothed this morning. Wow, I was magically clothed. Wow, I was magically fed. No, they feel the love. And with the love comes the clothes. And with the love comes the food. And that's how we are and how we should think of as God. with the love comes everything we need. And so think about that in terms of becoming closer to God. It's the truth.
Our next question this evening: how can we strengthen our meditation practice in the middle of our busy lives? This is a question I think that every devotee faces at the beginning of the path, in the middle of the path, and maybe even at the end of the path. It is a constant struggle, partly in the beginning just to establish a strong routine and then to increase our time of meditation. And then usually after we get a good rhythm going, and maybe this rhythm lasts months or even years, sometimes then a karmic bomb goes off, as Master used to call them. And suddenly we're in all kinds of restlessness or all kinds of busyness, and we're being pulled away from our sadhana or having to fight so much harder than we used to. What's the matter? It used to be just fine. And so the thing to keep in mind with finding time for sadhana and keeping it strong, there's a lot of things you can do. Of course, if you can make an agreement with your family that I'm acquiring a new habit, or I'd like to strengthen a habit of mine that makes me more cheerful and calm and pleasant to be around, then if you wouldn't mind, I'd like 15 minutes without the TV, or 15 minutes without the phone, or 15 minutes in my room, but some kind of understanding that they know not to bother you. And if they know what's good for them, they'll support you in this. And I mean that half jokingly, but it's also true in the sense that it will be better for them if you meditate. And so that's one possibility. Another is to see if you can find parts of your day that are under your control. For example, sometimes if we can just get up even a little bit earlier, before in the morning, before anyone else is awake, it gives us a little bit of extra time where we can meditate unobserved without impacting anybody else. Another possibility is you might be able to find some time at work, so either during a lunch break, or if there are different lulls during different times of the year or different times of the day, you might be able to catch 15-20 minutes or something that way. And yet another thing, in addition to the evening, in case you get home before everyone else. Of course, evenings are a little bit tricky because they're not always the same every day. If there's traffic, if there's extra shopping, if there's anything. But still, yet another option I've heard from some parents is that their children won't go to sleep unless they lay down with them. And so they will even, some parents have told me, they even go to sleep for some hours and then wake up in the middle of the night once everybody else has gone to sleep and meditate then. If you can pull that off and still get enough sleep, then more power to you. But the other thing to keep in mind, besides personal habits like that in terms of scheduling, is to just stay in touch with the masters as much as you can all day long. By this I mean reading from Autobiography of a Yogi, watching any number of videos on YouTube of Swamiji or Master, for example, or going to Facebook or any other sources of inspiration that you may have. But basically keeping your mind uplifted and in tune with higher realities. This will make it much easier, even mentally, to move into meditation. It'll make it easier to want to meditate. And it will also just give you more solution consciousness in terms of approaching that meditation. Okay, this happened. It came right at 7:30 when I was supposed to meditate. There was this webinar. So, okay, fine. Then I will just adjust and then meditate later because this is fun too. And keeping your mind uplifted is a great way to help your meditation, which again doesn't seem obvious, but as Dharmini said, environment is stronger than willpower. If you keep yourself in an environment of spiritual thinking and of meditation, even if you're alone or even if you're surrounded by others who are not thinking in those ways, still, if you practice that, you can find it easier to meditate. And the last thought I'd like to offer is, if you can, if there is a way for you to have satsang, whether through a center, an Ananda center near you, or else through Ananda India online, like these things that we're doing here, it would be very good to stay connected. We find over and over again that people come in the beginning and say, I can't meditate, you don't know what my home life is like. If you knew, you wouldn't even ask me to meditate. It's out of control and there's no way, and so on. And after some weeks of coming, for example, to repeated classes, repeated visits for a class series, for example, or else just coming to the satsang, they just find that there is a magnetism, there is a power for meditation that's building. Their family realizes that they're not going to give up, so the family gives up in terms of complaints. Why do you need 5 minutes to yourself? Okay, fine, have the 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, or 15. And also they find that there is a flow of grace, again, as Dharmini was referring to, a flow of grace that supports you. Remember, when you put energy out towards God, He puts energy out towards you. So it's not all up to you to solve this thing. And if you pray about it, and if you do the best you can, you will find a wind of grace that will help you move forward in the way that you'd like.
You know, the other thing I'd like to mention about this is, it's really imperative that we create a vibration in at least a part of our home that is spiritual minded. Many people live in an environment where the spirituality might be there in a religious way, but not in an energetic way. And, the puja room can also have storage in it and other people walking in and out of it. And it doesn't make it your place for you and God. And I highly recommend it, we highly recommend, Ananda highly recommends, Master highly recommends, you find a corner in your bedroom where you can set up your own personal altar, so that when you enter that space, it's already charged with peaceful vibrations. Many people who come to the centers feel starved during the week, and they feel desperate to get back to the center. Life shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't be. You should be carrying your own personal temple with you day in and day out. And yes, it's great. We want everyone to come to the center. We're glad for it. But you just can't set up a life that is starving in between. And you've got to set up a vibration of your own. And the only way you can do that is with a regular meditation practice and with a quiet, calm place in your home that you can call your own and that others are not going to impose on you. And sometimes we have to set priorities. Your peace is more important than anything. And Swamiji had a priority. He said he never will allow his peace be lost in all circumstances. He always maintained that peace of mind, and we have to set standards for ourselves in this, and we learn how to do that. And it doesn't mean we throw people out the window or family away or anything like that. We can find out how to do that through the guidance of our guru, through our own specific circumstances of home, but make it a priority. Really figure out, can I watch 30 minutes less of TV? Can I talk 30 minutes less at night? And can I still, one thing people might see that as withdrawing. Well, if you stay loving and even happier during the other 23 and a half hours, then that half hour can be for you. And if that half hour makes you a more deeply spiritually vibrant person, then it's very important to create that. And so really take seriously creating your own personal, private temple that you take with you everywhere and that you also have in your home. Otherwise, you'll be spiritually starved. And then what happens is you come to the center and you feel a real high and a real deep peace. And it does last partly throughout the week, but then it's gone. And without a regular practice, you can't keep, you know how when we have a balloon that we've got up in the air, and not one with helium, but one without helium, and we keep that balloon bouncing up in the air, that's the same as with our spirituality and with our sense of connection to God. We want to keep that balloon up in the air. And you come to the center and the balloon is floating high and high, and then you leave, and then after a few days the balloon gets lower and lower and lower. That balloon needs to stay high up in the air. For you to truly make spiritual progress, people are very concerned and talk all the time about, am I making spiritual progress? Well, you got to put that effort in. You've got to, not in a guilty way, do it with love. Do it with the desire to be with God. Do it with that desire, and give people a loving, no, I'm sorry, I need to do this 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes. I need that for myself. I'm sorry. But I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to give you all my love afterwards. And but you really have to set the priority, and sometimes it takes willpower. And that's why we have the energization exercises. That's why we have all our techniques. They really help with the willpower. So really consider making it a priority. Don't just think of it as, oh, can I fit it in between work, or can I fit it in between family time. No, it needs to be just as important as all the other things, if not more. And that's when you're going to be able to find the time for it, is when you give it a high priority and you're not just trying to squeeze it in between things. If you're trying to squeeze it in between things and it doesn't have a high priority, then those things you're squeezing it in between will then have a higher priority themselves. So you've got to give this a priority. Don't think of it as squeezing it in between, even though, you know, that can be helpful, especially for parents. We know. Parents, especially with young children, what are you going to do? You know, we have some parent friends on the spiritual path who say parenthood is the path to sainthood. So we know this. We know this. The other thing is get guidance from your local acharya. Try and figure it out with him or her. And most importantly, guidance between you and God on all of this. It's inside of you. It's right there. You just need to be quiet enough to listen for the answer.
Does diet and exercise help in better meditation? Well, that's actually a good question, because I'm sorry, it is a good question. I shouldn't say it's actually a good question. It is a good question, but it has a few different aspects that may not be obvious. On the one hand, certainly, diet and exercise promote good health, and so therefore if we are in good health as a result of these things, then if our body is healthier, it's going to be more supportive of anything we do, and certainly meditation. And specifically as a yogi and as a meditator, we begin to look at, for example, certain kinds of diet in the sense of foods that are perhaps excessively stimulating. These are rajasic foods, or deadening, like very heavily fried foods that after we eat 5 or 6 or 70 of, we just kind of, then try to meditate. You just can't. And because we're used to having our mind uplifted, and we want to have our mind uplifted, and we're working so hard to stay positive, and we find we eat something that's, for example, really heavily spicy or really heavily whatever, heavy, we then just are, guess what, heavy. And it's hard to meditate, and then we're in a bad mood, and then we don't sleep well, then wake up the next day, and it's like, look, this just canceled out everything I was trying to do the whole day before. And so again, as we were saying in the beginning, tastes change. You will find your taste changing naturally. You'll also find that through your experience that you'll just not be as interested in certain kinds of foods, for example. It's recommended to be a vegetarian. This is something each person has to take inside and and meditate on. But if you're serious about this spiritual path, for example, Yoganandaji recommended his disciples be vegetarian. There was his first disciple that had a lot of pains, physical pains, when he became a vegetarian. And Yoganandaji said, well, why don't you eat fish or chicken once a week? And then he did that, and his pains went away. Let me just check this to make sure we're not having a problem. Okay. And so Yoganandaji didn't say vegetarian or forget it, because he said your body cells have grown used to the meat, and so they're suffering without it. So have a little bit of it just to give them that due, and the pains went away. Now, the reason why I said this is actually a good question, or rather to say the answer is a little complicated, is we can sometimes on the spiritual path make an entire spirituality out of diet and exercise, and say, because I have done these 65 asanas each day, that then I am growing into samadhi. One man actually did that. Swamiji was with Anandamoy Ma, and a man and his teacher, Hatha yogis, came before her, and the one student was displaying all these very complicated twisted pretzel poses, and his guru said, you see how his perfection what perfection he has reached, and now he is ready to go into samadhi. And Swamiji's thought was, it was just so apparent how much ego there was and pride in being able to do these things, that the ego was way too strong to let him go into samadhi at that point. And similarly, with diet, we can go on a raw food binge, or we can go into fasting, or we can make a whole religion out of grape juice, and then say, this is the thing, if you just drink grape juice, it has everything the body needs, and on and on and on. So we have to be careful in extremes or in fads. Master recommended proper eatarianism. He said, eat properly. And one time when he was on a very long fast, Sri Yukteswar said, why not throw the dog a bone? Give the body its due, but no more. But still, it's better, as Master said to Swamiji, when Swamiji was on a fast of only grape juice, in fact, Master said, it's better to have a pure heart than a pure stomach. So keep these things in mind, do what you need to do, and you know which side of the spectrum you're on. And but remember that devotion is the greatest cleanser.
So here's a question. Many times knowing too much about any subject makes the approach toward the goal very dry, in the sense it kills the spontaneity. For it is the simplicity of the child which brings the divine more close. How to revive such a spontaneity? Similarly, when probing deep into oneself and to be aware all of the sudden the flaws in oneself, in multitude, all of a sudden makes one scared. How to deal with the confidence running low then? This is a really good question. And there's one ahead above it too. In terms of this running dry, it's very true. I don't know who said this first, but maybe Swamiji. When you're reading a lot of spiritual philosophy, and it can even happen with reading all of Master's writings and all of Swamiji's writings, the mind gets so full of these facts. And if we have a really strong mind and can memorize these facts, especially spiritual Vedas and all of the scripture that is so full of wisdom, but also a lot of facts. And when there's a discrepancy between how much we know in our minds and how much we practice it, then a big dryness happens. And then we have to ask ourselves, do I need to feel pride in knowing all these facts? Or should I get to work and start practicing right attitude? And I think it's this factual point of view that makes us very dry. When we're practicing it, then devotion comes in with it. Devotion then blends in with things. We have to bring our heart into all of this knowledge. And even Sri Yukteswar in his Holy Science at the end says, I have shown how important it is to have love help us find God, or I'm paraphrasing, but the book is very intellectual and written by a Jnana yogi. And, if the mind is following everything he said, and then it's kind of surprising that he said at the end this thing about love. Well, for a true Jnana yogi, love is also involved in self-realization. It's not just the mind. And wisdom involves devotion. Wisdom involves connecting to the heart, because we only have wisdom when we use our knowledge in a wise way. That's wisdom, using that knowledge in a wise way, making judgments in a wise way, and that wisdom needs to have the feedback of the heart. So someone who has become dry with too much knowledge, first of all, check yourself out, check your attitude out. Are you feeling spiritual pride, knowing so many of the scriptures, knowing so much? Rid yourself from that pride as soon as possible. And bring the heart in. And the way to do that is, what Swamiji did. He said he was very intellectual and that he began chanting. So it doesn't matter if you can sing well or not. Music is a very important aspect on the path. Yoganandaji said chanting is half the battle. So learn to chant. And if you're saying, okay, I already do chant, I do all the mantras, I can chant Mahamrityunjaya forwards and backwards 1,000 times, then go for a devotional chant. We have tons of chants from Yoganandaji and Swamiji that awaken devotion. And you'll find that if you take a break from the Vedic mantras and things like that, if you're doing them too intellectually, and do some new chants that are meant to awaken the heart, then you might find that when you go back to those Vedic chants, you bring in more meaning. Things also lose their energy and become dry when we forget the meaning of things. Suppose you can do all these chants. Well, do you know what they mean more than intellectually? Do you know exactly what the purpose of it is, and do you feel the effect of the purpose? Are you connecting to it in a practical way so that it truly does make you feel as though something is transforming inside of you? Because they're very powerful chants, but we can't just chant them because we've got them memorized and we have to do it every day. The Gayatri mantra is meant to dispel darkness. So when we say it, we should say it very consciously with the intention of asking God to flow through us to dispel darkness. And so that's how we re-energize any prayer, any practice that we have. We bring the meaning into it. So even with chanting some of these devotional chants, you can chant, from joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again, and have no feeling behind it. Have no sense of what it truly means. From joy I came. God is joy. For joy I live. No, from joy I came, for joy I live? Is that it? For joy I live. What does that mean? Am I living for joy? In sacred joy I melt again. See, when you feel that chant, and then you chant, from joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. And you feel that, then you feel the energy rise up the spine to the point between the eyebrows. Then do that 50 times, or 25 times, or 108 times. And feel that flow of devotion and God's presence within you, and the rush of energy up the spine. Remember also that energy flowing up the spine, we feel great. Energy flowing down the spine, we don't feel great. So if we're in a mode where our devotional practices make us feel dry, do something new, do something different that makes the energy rise. There was a second part to that question. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, the other, just to address briefly the other part of the question, which is what happens when we suddenly discover all kinds of flaws and how we can feel discouraged. It depends again on what side you are on that. We can approach that from at least two different directions. One is that we thought we were doing pretty well, and then we realize, oh my God, I have all these problems. Then Swamiji said, be glad when you discover a flaw in yourself, because you've seen it. Finally, you've seen it. He said it's been there all the time, but when you see it, you can work on it. And so it's actually a great gift when we look in the mirror and find something that needs correcting, because it's something that's not right, and that's blocking our energy even. And so when we release it, we may even find other things falling into place. The other side of it is that, I don't know how else to say it, but join the club. We're all here on this earth to work some things out and to get free. That's the work every one of us has to do here. And in a sense, you can think of it that everybody who is working towards sainthood is more or less on the same plane. The saints, fine, they're in a different category. And when we get inducted into the saint club and get the secret saint handshake, fine. But until then, we're all just working it out. And no matter how perfect someone seems or how imperfect they seem to us, and better we don't judge, that everybody is trying to find more happiness. First try to find more pleasure, then realizing, no, that doesn't last, happiness is better. Oh, finding even happiness doesn't last because it swings to sorrow. But bliss does last. And so let's all go for that, and let's know that others are trying for that according to their understanding. And that, as Sri Yukteswar said, those who are too good for this world are adorning some other. So we're not too good for this world, self-evidently, so we've got some things to work on. And it's, in a way, just kind of roll up our sleeves and get to work, as Dharmini was saying. And try not to, because it's just a trap of the ego. The ego can either say, I am so great, or it can say, I am so horrible. It's just as much ego to say either of those two statements. Master said you should have neither a superiority nor an inferiority complex. So just be reasonable in your approach. We're not trying to perfect this ego anyway. We're trying to go towards God. Who cares? Let Him worry about your imperfections. That's His problem. Your problem is, or your job is to focus on Him. The only other thing I would add is if you have an excessive inferiority complex and feel really badly, then please don't. Because we're, again, for the same reasons, we're all in this together. Find ways to encourage yourself. Find ways to say, no matter what I've done, if I'm doing the right thing now, I will be moving forward. As Sri Yukteswar said in Autobiography of a Yogi, and as we have found ourselves quoting several times in the past week for some reason, Sri Yukteswar said, forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until anchored in the divine. Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now.
The other thing, too, is what you're describing is called over-scrupulosity in the Christian religion, but it is very much what happens for all of us. And the other thing to know is we don't have control over our spiritual progress. We can put, as Dharmarajan was saying, the spiritual effort out, but we really don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know how much karma we have to work through. We don't know how much longer we have to go. We don't know how many more lifetimes. We just don't know. So it's better not to always worry about, well, I just meditated, an hour today. Does that cut off 5 minutes of a time of incarnation now. We don't need to involve our minds in that, because we just can't know. And so we need to just let go and do the best that we can. And it's easy to be studying Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and want to live up to those sutras perfectly. But we all make mistakes. We all sometimes, or we try as hard as we can, but we don't always live up to that. And we shouldn't judge ourselves by the mountaintop too harshly, because we will get there. And you can't force yourself. We were listening to a great talk by Swamiji. You can't force yourself to be truthful without, you can't just say, from now on I'm going to tell the truth. What Swamiji said was, you need to get rid of the need or the desire to not tell the truth. And then the natural beauty of the self comes out when we get rid of these negative tendencies. So focus on right attitude. Focus on getting rid of the negative tendencies, and let the spiritual progress be in God's hand where it belongs, and Guru's hands.
We're running out of time, and we've been hit with a whole deluge of questions, so we're very grateful to you. More questions than we can even answer, so if we don't get to your question now, we will write to you after this and at least respond to you through email. But we did want to also take time to answer the first question we received even before the webinar began. My question is, what should we do if we face a situation where we know which course of action to take, but still feel a little doubtful of our decision? And a related question, can we know God's will if we are a beginner in meditation?
The whole thing about knowing God's will, and we just got done with this workshop, so you might want to ask for the recordings if you didn't get them, is how important it is to find silence within the self, to listen to those answers of God. It's the nature of the mind to doubt. And we have to learn the difference between true guidance and kind of intellectual thought. And we might logically say, well, I should do this because logically it makes the most sense. But then when we meditate, our heart says, no, don't do it that way. And I don't mean based in desire and a strong emotion. I mean based in feeling, that intuition. And yes, if you're new, yes, you can feel God's will. Doesn't mean it's accurate 100% of the time or anything. No one's is until they're self-realized. So certainly it's worth it to begin trying to feel God's will in things. And you already know what it feels like to have God's will be fulfilled, because when you're happy, you're fulfilling God's will. God wants us to be happy. God wants us to feel connected to Him when we're in those states. Not just happy because something good happened outside of ourselves, but happy just on the inside just because. Then that means you're following God's will when you find that. And we often think following God's will means follow God's will to some external outcome. Well, Swamiji very often would say it doesn't matter what you do. What matters most is, how are you going to become happy? So it's not necessarily what you do, meaning, whatever career goals you might have, those are important. We want to fulfill our dharma, and we want to, keep moving forward on a professional level. But we also need to be happy, and we have to find a way to be happy. And most often it has nothing to do with what we're doing outside of ourselves. It's what we're doing inside. I mean, we know this because we can be trapped in our feelings around our problems, suffering, and you meditate for 15 minutes and then you're happy again. Did the circumstances change? No. Our perspective changed. And that's the truth. And we have to continue in that way so that we can remain lifted upward. As soon as we stop meditating, as soon as we stop doing positive things for ourselves, then we get dragged down. And we have to remember to keep that balloon up in the air again. So the more we keep the balloon up in the air of happiness, the more that will become our habit. And then it'll feel strange when we're in a weird mood. We want to have the positive mood be happening most of the time, and have these negative moods and criticalness towards ourselves and others be in the minority of the time. And find that place of happiness for yourself. It's there. And Swamiji said everybody is trying to find happiness in their lives. Everybody. No matter where they are, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing, everyone, even a crook, is trying to find happiness.
Well, thank you again for joining us this evening, and it's very nice to have had this time together, and thank you for the very good questions. And remember, your questions also help others who may have a similar question or provokes other questions. So thanks again, and we look forward to connecting with you online, offline, some other time, and in the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week.
God bless you.